Good morning, grandkids. Well, we're back here today with another short excerpt from the story that I started trying to write several years ago and haven't written in for a long time. But remember the last time we left Val in that tunnel? And he had contacted his father, the wizard Morley, with the seeing eye amulet that he has, and he's waiting for him to get back to you. And I'll just read the last 2 or 3 sentences of that and then go on into the next part. Val leaned against the rocky wall and sank down to the floor as a wave of dizziness flowed over him. Remember, he had knocked his head on a rock. As he waited, he started thinking about when Morley sent him for the eyes with which to fashion these amulets. I seemed so young then, he thought. I remember that I was practicing my sneaking talents as I was going to Falafas. And that's where that one ended. And the next chapter takes up: the dirty barefoot lad ran among the throngs of people surrounding the market stalls, dodging his way this way and that, moving hurriedly toward the alchemist's shop, which was in a lane off the far end of the marketplace. As he neared the corner, he warily watched 2 rough-looking men wearing tattered seamen's jerseys sitting out front of a grog shop at a dirty table, lifting a tot of ale. They were talking in low tones and glanced his way. Knowing that many a young man had been snatched off the streets to serve in slavery on ships from distant ports, the lad's hand automatically went to the dirk stuffed in the waist of his breeches. He kept his eyes on the men as he slipped into the dim cobblestone lane which wormed its way through the shadows away from the crowded street. He slowed down and sauntered slowly past the shop. The cobbler's shop had an old boot hanging beside the door, and in the doorway of a palm reader's establishment stood an old woman dressed in faded purples and reds, with copper chains strung around her grimy neck. "Hey there, you look like a lusty lad who might be in need of knowing his trials, or good fortune, as the case may be." The boy shook his head and hurried past. Finally, he spotted the sign he was looking for farther on in the gloom. The faded red peeling paint spelled out Falafas on an old weathered board hanging from a rusty chain over the doorway. An old tarnished lantern hung by the door, casting a feeble light around the entrance. He approached the alchemist's shop, noticing the many small panes of colored glass which made up its one and only dusty window. The door was standing open, as if hopeful of any stray cooling breeze that might accidentally sneak inside. The lad slipped through the doorway, looking around at the many items cluttering the small shop. There was a tall man inside, looking every inch the aristocrat in his silk waistcoat and lace cravat, sniffing the various tobaccos for sale. The lad moved around the shop, picking up small stoppered bottles, looking them over, then moving on to the next thing which snagged his interest. He was aware of the scant light filtering through the colored glass of the window, playing over the many shapes of bottles and jars in dim jewel tones and caught in dusty motes. The smell in the shop was pleasant enough: sweet perfumes, pungent tobaccos, and exotic scents that he couldn't define. Falafa himself was perched on a stool behind the counter in the dim and dusty recesses of the room, helping a lady with her purchase of an overly sweet perfume. The young lad ignored him as he continued to finger various items as they caught his fancy, and slowly worked his way toward the back. He picked up a soft, dusty leather pouch and sneezed. Falafel barked from the rear of the shop. "Boy, what are you up to? I won't have any thieving street trash fingering things into their britches in my shop. What do you want? Speak up or get out." As the two customers left the shop, the boy reached the counter and looked up at the man. Falafel was a short, round man with long, stringy gray hair, but the top of his head was bald and covered with a sheen of sweat. Small, round glasses were perched precariously on his nose. He had a greasy leather apron wrapped around his fat middle. When he moved his head, a gold hoop in one ear flashed through the strings of hair. He was lustily working on a large tankard of grog, with one dirty nailed finger pointing at the youth. "Well, what have you got to say for yourself, thief?" Then he glanced over the top of his glasses and said, "Well, bless me if it isn't Val. It's been a spell since I clapped eyes on ye in here. What's that old wizard up to now? And what's with disguise? Be ye in training to be a spy, then?" Still examining the shop's wares, Val said, "You never know when such a talent may come in handy." He shifted his eyes around toward Falafel and said, "My master sent me for his needs, but it ain't none of this sweet-smelling stuff." "Well, then, what exactly is your master has need of this time?" he asked. Another customer entered the shop, so Val leaned closer to the man, and dropping his voice, he whispered, "An eye of an eagle. Actually, 2 of them." Falafel stared at him. The silence in the room stretched out. Morley always seems to want something stranger than the time before. But never worry. I've always got whatever he needs. If not, I can get it. Like a shot, he snapped his pudgy fingers, and a stooped-over, skinny old man appeared from behind a stained leather curtain hanging in a doorway behind him. The man was totally bald, wore a black patch over one eye. The other eye squinted at the boy. Without turning his eyes from Val, Falafel said, "Iggy, take this lad into the back and fix him up." Falafel reached out and took hold of the boy's arm as he rounded the corner. "Be giving my regards to your master, and tell him he needs to pay up his account one of these days." Releasing the boy's arm, he returned to his tankard of grog. The boy let the leather curtain flap behind him as he entered the back room. He stopped, looking around at the shelves of jars, tables of beakers and pestles, and bowls of liquids simmering over flames. The smell back here sure wasn't as nice as out front. He started wandering shelf to shelf, as he always enjoyed eyeing the gruesome merchandise in the back of Falafel's shop. In the corner, he spied a stuffed black crow on a perch. He walked over to it, looking closely into its beady black eye. Suddenly it blinked, causing Val to jump back. "Guess it wasn't stuffed," he laughed to himself. He picked up one jar which contained a smelly liquid full of eyeballs. Some seemed bloodshot, and they were thin, bloody strings of something or other floating around in the liquid. Glancing with raised eyebrows at Iggy's eye patch, he lifted up the jar. Iggy asked him what it was he wanted. 2 eyes of an eagle. Would they be in here with these? Iggy, saying no, indicated which jar, and the boy reached for it, looking at the eagle's eyes, which were floating around inside. He grinned and handed the jar to Iggy. "I'll take 2 of them," he said, and watched as the old man spooned them out into a small jar, adding some of the liquid and pushing in a cork stopper. He then placed the little jar into a small leather patch and handed it to Val. Taking it from Iggy, he started to go back through the leather curtain, but Iggy pulled on his sleeve with a gesture toward a door leading to an alley at the rear of the room. Leaving the shop by the back way, he made his way to the edge of the village and slipped into the woods. Then he took off at an easy lope toward the wizard's spire. Ah, yes, Val thought, as he slumped against the tunnel wall, waiting for Morley. That was some time ago. So that's the end of this part of the story. Until next time, grandkids. So I'll see you later on with some more of this story. Bye, grandkids.